I thought tonight would finally heal our broken family. Instead, I'm sitting here with red wine dripping from my hair, staining my white blouse crimson, while my sister Brielle towers over me, screaming that I have until sunrise to get out of her house. My parents, Patricia and Harold, are actually clapping and cheering her on like she just scored the winning touchdown. But I'm not crying. I'm not begging. I'm reaching into my purse, pulling out a brass key and placing it gently on the wine-soaked tablecloth. Then I smile and say the words that will change everything. Then you have 60 seconds to pack your things and get out of my house. Let me back up 6 months to explain how we got here, because this story starts with the biggest mistake of my life. No, that's wrong. It starts with the biggest act of love that got twisted into the cruelest betrayal. Grandma Eleanor died that spring, leaving me an inheritance nobody in my family knew about. She'd been quietly investing her pension money for decades, and when the lawyer called to tell me I'd inherited $230,000, I nearly dropped the phone. The condition was simple: use it wisely to help family. Brielle was drowning. Her divorce from that worthless husband, Derek, had left her with nothing but debt and a broken spirit. She was living in a tiny apartment with her 7-year-old daughter, Madison, working 2 jobs just to afford groceries. Every family gathering, she looked more defeated, more hopeless. Mom and Dad kept saying someone should help her, but they never offered to do anything themselves beyond buying groceries occasionally. So I bought her a house. Not just any house, but a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street with a white picket fence and a garden Madison could play in. It cost $180,000, and I put the deed in my own name temporarily while I planned the perfect surprise. I was going to transfer it to her once she got stable, but I wanted to make sure she wouldn't lose it if any of Derek's debts came back to haunt her. The plan was simple: invite her over for dinner, hand her the keys, and watch her face light up when she realized she and Madison finally had a real home. But life never follows the script you write for it. 3 weeks after I bought the house, Brielle called me sobbing. She'd been evicted and had nowhere to go. Without thinking twice, I invited her to stay in the house I'd bought for her, telling her it belonged to a friend who was traveling abroad. I figured I'd reveal the truth once she settled in and felt secure. That was my first mistake. The second was trusting my family to be decent human beings. Within a month, Mom and Dad had moved in too. They claimed their apartment lease was up and they needed somewhere to stay temporarily. Harold kept talking about his back problems, how the stairs in their old place were too hard for him. Patricia mentioned how nice it would be for Madison to have her grandparents close by. It all sounded reasonable, even sweet. But as I'm sitting here with wine in my hair, watching my sister's face twisted with rage, I understand exactly what's been happening. They never saw this as temporary. They saw it as an opportunity. The wine is still dripping from my bangs when Patricia leans forward and whispers something to Harold that makes my blood freeze. She thinks I can't hear her, but the words cut through the silence like a blade. Now that we've got her out, we can finally change the locks and make this official. That's when I realize they've been planning this from the beginning. The dinner, the wine, the theatrical humiliation. They wanted to break me down so completely that I'd just walk away and never look back. They wanted me to abandon everything so they could take it all. But what they don't know, what they couldn't possibly know, is that I've been watching them. I've seen Harold going through my personal files in the study. I've noticed Patricia wearing my grandmother's jewelry that I'd stored in the bedroom closet. I've watched Brielle answering the door like she's lived here for years, telling neighbors and delivery drivers that this is her family home. The brass key sits on the table between us, catching the light from the chandelier I'd picked out specifically because I thought Brielle would love it. Such a small object to hold so much power, such a tiny piece of metal to completely destroy their world. Because that key isn't just to this house, it's the key to the safety deposit box, where I keep all the real documents, the deed with my name on it, the bank records showing where the money came from, the recorded conversations I've been having with my lawyer about their suspicious behavior. They think they've won. They think they've finally gotten rid of the responsible daughter who always made them look bad by comparison. But they're about to learn that underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose everything. Brielle's voice drops to that saccharine tone she always uses when she's about to lie. Artemis. I know this is hard to accept, but this house has always been mine. I have the paperwork to prove it. She reaches into a manila folder that was conveniently placed on the side table, pulling out what looks like official documents. Her hands are shaking slightly, but her voice gains confidence as she spreads the papers across the table, like she's dealing winning cards. I inherited it from Great-Aunt Stella. She continues, her eyes never meeting mine. You know Dad's sister who lived in Oregon. She left it to me in her will because I was the one who always sent her Christmas cards. The story is elaborate and well-rehearsed. Patricia nods along enthusiastically, adding details about how Stella always loved Brielle best, how she worried about Brielle's situation after the divorce. Harold pipes up with memories of Stella visiting when we were children, how she used to bring Brielle special presents and always said she was her favorite niece. But there's one tiny problem with their beautiful story. Great-Aunt Stella died when we were 12 years old and she never owned property anywhere. She rented a studio apartment in Portland and worked at a grocery store her entire life. I remember because Mom used to complain about having to send her $20 every birthday. These documents look very official, I say calmly, wiping the last of the wine from my neck with my napkin. Where did you get them prepared? Brielle's confidence falters for just a second, but she recovers quickly. Marcus Thornfield handled everything. You remember Marcus, right? He went to high school with Dad. He's a lawyer, now has his own practice downtown. Marcus Thornfield. I definitely remember him. He's the same Marcus who got arrested for DUI 3 times in high school and barely graduated. The same Marcus who Dad plays poker with every Thursday night at the Elks Lodge. The same Marcus who's been facing disbarment proceedings for the past 2 years, according to the State Bar Association's website. Marcus has been so helpful. Patricia adds, her voice dripping with false gratitude. He explained how these inheritance cases work, how sometimes families don't know about properties that get passed down through distant relatives. He said it's more common than people think. Harold nods sagely as if he's become an expert in inheritance law overnight. The important thing is that everything's legal now. The property transfer has been filed with the county, and Brielle's name is on all the utility accounts. We've been paying all the expenses maintaining the property. It's all properly documented. They've thought of everything, or at least they think they have. The fake inheritance story, the corrupt lawyer friend, the gradual takeover of household responsibilities to establish a pattern of ownership. They've even been careful to pay utilities and maintenance costs, probably using money they've stolen from my accounts. But they made one crucial error. They got greedy. It's interesting that you mention the utility accounts, I say, reaching for my phone, because I got a call from the gas company last week. Apparently someone's been trying to remove my name from the account and add Brielle's instead, but they needed my signature to authorize the change. The color drains from Brielle's face. Patricia and Harold exchange a look that confirms everything I suspected. The customer service representative was very helpful. I continue scrolling through my phone. She explained that they'd received several calls about this account and that someone had even submitted paperwork with what appeared to be my signature. But when they called the phone number on file to verify the change, they reached me instead of whoever was expecting the call. I turned my phone around to show them the screen. It's displaying a very clear photograph of a utility transfer form with my forged signature at the bottom. This is my signature, I say, pointing to the scrawled name at the bottom of the form. Except I never signed this document. In fact, I've never even seen this document before today. But I did have a very interesting conversation with a handwriting expert about it. The silence that follows is deafening. Harold starts to say something, but Patricia cuts him off with a sharp look. Brielle is staring at the document like it might disappear if she concentrates hard enough. The expert pointed out several interesting things about this signature. I continue. The pressure patterns are wrong. The pen strokes don't match my natural hand movement. And most importantly, whoever forged it made the same error that Harold always makes when he writes the letter A. He loops it too high and curves it to the right. It's a very distinctive quirk. Harold's face turns bright red and he starts stammering about misunderstandings and innocent mistakes. But I'm not finished. That got me curious about what other documents might have my forged signature. So I started making some calls. The bank, the insurance company, even the post office. And you know what I discovered? I pull out a thick folder from my purse and set it on the table. Over the past 3 months, someone has been very busy trying to transfer my assets. Bank accounts, insurance policies, even my car registration. All with beautifully forged signatures that look just like this one. Patricia finally finds her voice. You can't prove anything. Signatures change over time. People's handwriting varies. You're absolutely right. I agree. Signatures do change. That's why I've been working with Detective Samuel Rivera from the fraud unit. He's been very interested in this case, especially when I showed him the pattern of attempted transfers. Apparently, this type of systematic identity theft within families is becoming more common, and they've been looking for a clear-cut case to prosecute. The words hit them like physical blows. Harold slumps back in his chair. Patricia's mouth opens and closes without sound. Brielle looks like she's about to be sick. But wait, I say, my voice still eerily calm. It gets better. Because when Detective Rivera started investigating, he discovered something fascinating. Apparently, this isn't the first time someone in this family has been accused of financial fraud. I open the folder and pull out a police report that's 5 years old. Remember Uncle Robert, Mom-Dad's brother, who had to go into assisted living? The one who mysteriously lost all his savings right before he needed long-term care. The family always said he must have been scammed by strangers, but the police report tells a different story. Patricia's face goes white. Harold looks like he's having trouble breathing. According to this report, Uncle Robert accused his family members of stealing from him. He claimed someone was forging his signature and transferring his money. The case was closed due to insufficient evidence and Robert's deteriorating mental state. But the investigating officer noted that the alleged perpetrators had access to Robert's personal information and had been helping him manage his finances. I look at each of them in turn, watching the realization dawn that their past is catching up with them. The same investigating officer, by the way, who's now Detective Rivera's supervisor. And when Detective Rivera mentioned this case to him, Lieutenant Anderson remembered it very clearly. He said he always regretted not being able to prove what happened to Uncle Robert. He said this new case might finally give them the evidence they need to pursue charges. The folder contains more documents than they could have imagined. Bank records showing suspicious transfers from my accounts, copies of forged signatures on multiple documents, screenshots of attempts to change passwords on my online accounts, even security camera footage from the bank showing Harold trying to access my safety deposit box with a fake ID. But the most damaging evidence is the one thing they never expected me to have. Hidden at the bottom of the folder is a small digital recorder. I've been recording our conversations for weeks. I tell them as I place the device on the table. Every time you discussed your plans when you thought I couldn't hear. Every time Dad mentioned how easy it would be to have me declared incompetent. Every time Mom talked about finally getting what the family deserved. I press play and their own voices fill the room discussing their scheme in their own words. Harold talking about how they could claim I'd been mentally unstable since Grandma's death. Patricia planning how they'd divide my assets once they gained control. Brielle worrying about getting caught, but being reassured that I was too trusting to ever suspect them. Their own words convict them more thoroughly than any evidence I could have gathered. The recording plays their plotting voices back to them with crystal clarity, and I watch 3 people I'd loved my entire life transform into strangers before my eyes. But what they're hearing isn't even the most damning evidence I have. It's just the appetizer. That conversation was from last Tuesday. I tell them as their own voices discuss the best way to isolate me from my support system. But I have recordings going back almost 6 weeks. Would you like to hear the one where Dad explains his gambling debts? Or maybe the one where Mom talks about the credit cards she's maxed out buying designer handbags? Harold lurches forward, trying to grab the recorder, but I'm faster. I sweep it into my purse and pull out something even more devastating. My phone with a text message conversation clearly visible on the screen. This is actually my favorite piece of evidence, I say, turning the screen so they can see it. It's a text thread between Brielle and Marcus Thornfield, your brilliant lawyer friend. She's been sending him updates about my daily routine when I leave for work, when I come home, even when I sleep. Marcus has been using that information to break into this house and plant fake documents while I'm not here. Brielle's face crumples as she recognizes her own words on the screen. Text after text detailing my schedule, like I'm a target to be surveilled. Times when she knew I'd be at the grocery store, evenings when I stayed late at work, weekends when I visited friends. But this is where it gets really interesting. I continue scrolling to the most recent messages. Because yesterday Marcus got nervous. He sent Brielle a very detailed message explaining that they needed to accelerate their timeline. Apparently, he's heard rumors that the State Bar Association is closing in on his practice, and he needs to finish this scam before he gets disbarred and potentially arrested. I read directly from the screen. We need to get her out of the house this week. I've got the final documents ready, but I need access to plant them in the filing cabinet. Once she's gone, we can claim adverse possession and make this whole thing stick. Just provoke her into leaving and don't let her take anything with her. The less evidence she has, the better. The text message thread reveals their entire strategy. Marcus coaching Brielle on how to manipulate me emotionally. Detailed instructions on gaslighting techniques to make me doubt my own memory. Even a backup plan involving having me involuntarily committed if I refuse to leave voluntarily. The wine throwing was Marcus's idea. I informed them, watching Brielle's shoulders shake. He said emotional outbursts would support their claim that I'm mentally unstable. He told you to make sure there were witnesses to my erratic behavior, which is why you invited the neighbors over for dinner tomorrow night. You were planning to tell them I'd become violent and dangerous. Patricia finally explodes. You manipulative little witch. You've been spying on your own family. You've been setting traps like we're criminals. No, Mom. I correct her, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I've been documenting crimes that were already being committed. There's a difference between investigating suspicious behavior and actually committing fraud. Harold tries a different approach, his voice taking on the paternal tone he's used to manipulate me since childhood. Sweetheart, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. We're family. We would never intentionally hurt you. Maybe there have been some miscommunications, some paperwork errors, but we can work this out among ourselves. Can we work out the $43,000 you've stolen from my checking account? I ask, pulling out bank statements from my folder. Can we work out the life insurance policy you changed to make yourselves the beneficiaries? Can we work out the credit cards you opened in my name and maxed out buying gambling chips and designer purses? Each accusation hits them like a sledgehammer. The bank statements show a clear pattern of unauthorized transfers. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums as they grew bolder. 500 here, 1,000 there, building up to massive withdrawals that nearly emptied my savings. I have statements going back 4 months. I continue spreading the papers across the table like evidence in a courtroom. Every unauthorized transfer, every forged check, every fraudulent purchase. The bank's fraud investigation unit has been tracking it all. Brielle finally breaks down completely. I never wanted to do this, she sobs. They said it was just borrowing. They said you'd never notice small amounts. They said rich people like you don't pay attention to money anyway. Rich people like me, I repeat incredulously. Brielle, I'm a social worker. I make $38,000 a year. Every penny of that money came from Grandma's inheritance money. I was saving to help you build a better life, and same knee. The irony hits her like a physical blow. She'd been stealing the very money I'd intended to give her freely. All the manipulation, all the lies, all the betrayal had been completely unnecessary. If they'd simply asked for help, if they'd been honest about their financial problems, I would have given them whatever they needed. But instead of asking for help, they'd chosen to take everything. The gambling debts were getting out of control. Harold admits, his voice barely above a whisper. I owed some dangerous people money. They were threatening to hurt the family if I didn't pay up. I panicked. So you decided to hurt me instead, I state flatly. You decided that destroying your daughter's life was preferable to facing the consequences of your own choices. Patricia tries to defend him. We were going to pay it back. Once we got the house settled, once we had some equity to work with, we were going to replace every penny. With what money? I challenge. You're both unemployed. Dad's been living off disability payments and poker winnings for 2 years, and you haven't worked since the department store closed. Where exactly was this replacement money going to come from? The questions hang in the air unanswered because we all know the truth. There was never going to be any payback. There was never going to be any replacement money. The plan was to take everything I had and disappear, leaving me with nothing but debt and legal troubles. But their plan had one fatal flaw. They assumed I was the same naive, trusting person I'd always been. They assumed I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. As if summoned by my thoughts, a car door slams outside, then another. Through the dining room window, I can see 2 unmarked police vehicles pulling up to the curb. Right on time, I murmur, checking my watch. I told Detective Rivera to arrive at 8:30. That gives us just enough time for you to hear the rest of what I know before you're arrested. The look of absolute terror on their faces is almost worth 6 months of betrayal and heartbreak. Almost. The doorbell rings with the authority of law enforcement, and Detective Samuel Rivera's voice carries through the front door as he identifies himself. Harold makes a desperate lunge toward the back of the house, but 2 more officers are already coming through the kitchen entrance, their badges clearly visible. Nobody needs to move suddenly, Detective Rivera announces as he enters the dining room, his partner Detective Maria Santos right behind him. We just want to talk. But it's not just the local police. FBI Financial Crimes Agent Isabella Carter follows them in her federal badge, commanding a different level of respect and fear. Behind her is someone I recognize from news reports, Assistant District Attorney Rachel Blackwood, known for her aggressive prosecution of white-collar crime. Good evening, everyone, Agent Carter says professionally, her eyes scanning the wine-stained table and scattered documents. I'm Agent Carter with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We've been investigating allegations of conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Elder abuse, Patricia sputters. We're not elderly. The charges don't refer to you, ma'am, Seaspars. Assistant District Attorney Blackwood clarifies. They refer to Robert Hayes Harold's deceased brother, whose estate was systematically plundered by family members 5 years ago. New evidence has come to light that reopens that case. Harold's face goes gray. Uncle Robert died of natural causes. There's no proof anyone did anything wrong. Actually, there is, Agent Carter responds, pulling out a thick federal case file. Uncle Robert contacted the FBI 6 months before his death. He'd been secretly recording conversations with family members who were pressuring him to change his will and transfer his assets. Those recordings were sealed pending investigation, but your current activities have provided enough corroborating evidence to unseal them. She opens the file and pulls out transcripts of conversations between Harold and Uncle Robert. Even from across the table, I can see Harold's name highlighted throughout the documents, along with detailed descriptions of financial manipulation and elder coercion. We also have security footage from Uncle Robert's bank, Detective Santos adds. Surveillance video showing Harold Hayes using a power of attorney document to transfer funds from Robert Hayes' accounts to accounts controlled by Harold and Patricia Hayes. The power of attorney was signed while Robert Hayes was heavily medicated following surgery, and the bank teller noted that he appeared confused and disoriented. Brielle looks frantically between the law enforcement officers and our parents, finally understanding that she's been dragged into something much larger than a simple house theft. I didn't know anything about Uncle Robert. I was just supposed to help with the house. "We know Miss Hayes," Assistant District Attorney Blackwood says gently. "We've reviewed the evidence against you separately. Your cooperation in this investigation will be taken into account during plea negotiations." But Agent Carter isn't finished. She pulls out another file, this one even thicker than the first. "The investigation into Robert Hayes' death led us to examine other suspicious financial activity in your family. We discovered a pattern going back 12 years involving at least 6 elderly individuals who died under circumstances where family members gained access to their assets shortly before their deaths." The room goes completely silent. Even I hadn't suspected the scope of their crimes went back that far. "Grandma Eleanor's death triggered a review of her financial records," Agent Carter continues. "We found evidence that someone had been systematically transferring small amounts from her accounts for the 2 years before she died. Someone with access to her personal information and her trust." Patricia breaks down completely sobbing as she realizes they're talking about Harold's own mother. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. She was old and confused anyway. She wasn't using the money. Grandma Eleanor was 91 years old and suffering from early dementia. I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. "You stole from your own mother while she was dying." Harold tries to justify it. "She needed care we couldn't afford. The nursing home was expensive. We were just making sure the money went to help her instead of sitting in accounts she'd forgotten about. The nursing home she never needed." Detective Rivera points out, consulting his notes, "Because you convinced her to stay home with minimal care so you could maintain access to her finances. The care facility has no record of any inquiries or applications from your family." The web of lies unravels completely as each piece of evidence builds on the last. Financial records showing systematic theft from vulnerable family members, forged documents giving Harold power of attorney over elderly relatives, insurance policies mysteriously changed shortly before deaths that were ruled natural but never thoroughly investigated. The pattern is clear. Assistant District Attorney Blackwood explains, "Target elderly family members gain access to their finances through manipulation or forged documents, systematically drain their accounts, then inherit whatever remains. When you ran out of elderly relatives, you turned on Artemis." Agent Carter pulls out one final document that makes my blood run cold. "We also found evidence that Grandma Eleanor's death may not have been as natural as initially believed. Her medical records show unexplained medication interactions in the days before her death, and someone had been altering her prescription schedule. The accusation hangs in the air like poison. The possibility that they didn't just steal from Grandma Eleanor, but actually hastened her death to gain access to her money." "You're lying," Patricia screams. "Eleanor died of old age. She was sick for months." "She was sick because someone was giving her conflicting medications," Agent Carter states flatly. "Someone who had convinced her regular doctor that the family was managing her care at home. Someone who had access to her prescription bottles and her daily routine." Detective Santos steps forward with handcuffs. "Harold Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud identity theft, elder abuse, and suspicion of criminally negligent homicide. You have the right to remain silent." Harold doesn't resist as the cuffs click into place, but his eyes find mine across the table. "Artemis, please. You're my daughter. Don't let them destroy your family over money." "You destroyed this family the moment you chose greed over love," I tell him. "You destroyed it when you stole from your own mother. You destroyed it when you tried to steal my future to cover your gambling debts." Patricia gets the same treatment, though. She fights the handcuffs every step of the way. "This is insane. Families help each other. We were just trying to survive by committing federal crimes." Assistant District Attorney Blackwood reminds her, "Patricia Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud identity theft and money laundering." Brielle looks at the remaining officers with terror in her eyes. Am I being arrested too? Agent Carter considers for a moment. That depends entirely on your willingness to cooperate with our investigation. We have evidence of your participation in the current fraud, but we also have evidence that you were coerced and manipulated. If you're willing to testify truthfully about what you know, we can discuss alternatives to prosecution. I'll tell you everything. Brielle agrees immediately. I never wanted to hurt Artemis. I just wanted a safe place for my daughter to live. They said it would just be borrowing just until we got back on our feet. As my parents are led away in handcuffs, the dining room where I'd hoped to rebuild our family relationships becomes the scene of its final destruction. But for the first time in months, I feel something I'd almost forgotten. Relief. The nightmare is over and justice is finally within reach. The house feels hollow and strange after the law enforcement officers leave with my parents. Brielle sits across from me at the same table where she'd thrown wine in my face an hour ago, but now she looks like a completely different person. The righteous anger is gone, replaced by shame and exhaustion that ages her beyond her 32 years. I need to call Madison's babysitter, she says quietly, her voice hoarse from crying. I need to tell her I'm going to be late picking her up. I need to figure out what I'm going to tell my daughter about why Grandma and Grandpa won't be coming home tonight. The mention of Madison, my 7-year-old niece, who has no idea her family has been torn apart by greed and betrayal, hits me like a physical blow. Throughout everything, I'd been focused on protecting myself and seeking justice, but I hadn't fully considered the innocent casualties of my parents' crimes. What happens to Madison now? I asked Detective Rivera, who stayed behind to finish collecting evidence. Child Protective Services will need to evaluate the situation, he explains gently. With both grandparents in custody and her father out of the picture, custody will likely go to the next available family member, provided they pass background checks and home inspections. He looks at me meaningfully, and I understand. I'm probably Madison's only chance at staying with family instead of going into foster care. The weight of that responsibility settles on my shoulders like a lead blanket. Brielle sees the exchange and breaks down again. I've ruined everything. My daughter's going to lose her home, her family, her stability, all because I was too weak to stand up to Mom and Dad. All because I was too proud to ask you for help when I really needed it. Why didn't you ask me? I need to understand this part. Brielle, you knew I'd do anything for you and Madison. Why did you let them convince you to steal instead of just talking to me? She wipes her eyes with a napkin that still smells like wine, leaving mascara streaks on her cheeks. Because they made it sound like you'd already decided we weren't worth helping. Dad said you'd become selfish since getting your inheritance, that you looked down on us for being poor. Mom said you'd probably give me a lecture about responsibility and offer to pay for financial planning classes instead of actually helping. The manipulation runs deeper than I'd realized. My parents hadn't just convinced Brielle to participate in their scheme. They'd poisoned her against me first, making her believe that asking for help would lead to humiliation and rejection. They said you'd want to control every aspect of my life if you helped me financially, Brielle continues. They said rich people always use money to manipulate poor relatives, and that you'd probably make me sign contracts or put conditions on any help you offered. Did you really believe I would do that to you? The question comes out harsher than I intended, but I need to know. Brielle looks up at me with eyes full of regret. I wanted to believe you wouldn't, but they were so convincing and I was so desperate. When you're drowning financially, when you're working 2 jobs and still can't afford to buy your kid new shoes, it becomes easy to believe that everyone else has secret advantages you don't know about. Detective Rivera finishes photographing the forged documents and gathering them into evidence bags. Before he leaves, he hands me a victim assistance brochure and explains the legal process that will follow. Federal charges mean federal court, which means my parents could be facing serious prison time if convicted. The financial recovery process will be complex, and he warns me. Some of the money can be recovered through asset seizure, but gambling debts and cash expenditures are usually gone for good. You should prepare for the possibility that you won't recover everything they stole. After he leaves, Brielle and I sit in silence for several minutes processing the magnitude of what's happened. The dining room feels like a crime scene now, with evidence tape marking where documents were collected and dust powder on surfaces where fingerprints were taken. I need to tell you about the therapy, Brielle says suddenly, about the depression and anxiety I've been dealing with since the divorce. Dr. Susan Martinez at the Community Health Center has been working with me for months, and she's been trying to help me see how Mom and Dad manipulate situations. This is news to me. You've been in therapy? Since March. The court required it as part of the divorce settlement because Derek claimed I was emotionally unstable. Dr. Martinez has been helping me understand some of the patterns in our family, how Mom and Dad use guilt and fear to control people. She warned me that they might try to pull me into financial schemes if they got desperate. The revelation that Brielle had professional help recognizing the manipulation makes her participation even more painful. She knew what was happening and participated anyway. Dr. Martinez told me to call her if they ever pressured me to do anything illegal. Brielle continues, but when they started talking about the house situation, they made it sound like you were the one doing something wrong. They said you'd stolen the house from someone else and that we were just trying to return it to its rightful owner. Did you believe that? Brielle shakes her head. Not really, but I wanted to believe it because it made participating feel less wrong. I convinced myself that even if the story wasn't completely true, maybe you had come by the house in some questionable way, and maybe I deserved it more because I actually needed it. The rationalization process she describes is exactly what Dr. Martinez would have warned her about. The way desperate people convince themselves that wrong actions are justified by circumstances. There's something else you need to know. Brielle says, her voice barely above a whisper. About Grandma Eleanor's medication. I was there the week before she died helping Mom organize her pills. I saw Mom adding extra pills to the evening container pills that weren't part of Grandma's normal prescriptions. When I asked about it, Mom said the doctor had increased the dosages to help with Grandma's confusion. My heart stops. Did you check with the doctor? I called the office, but they said Grandma hadn't been in for an appointment in over a month. They said any medication changes would have required an office visit. But when I told Mom what they said, she got angry and told me I was causing trouble for no reason. She said I was being paranoid and that I should mind my own business. The implication is devastating. Not only had my parents stolen from Grandma Eleanor, they may have actually hastened her death to get faster access to her money. Why didn't you do anything? I ask. Because I was scared, Brielle admits. Because I was already struggling to take care of Madison, and I was terrified that if I accused Mom of something serious, she'd turn the whole family against me. I was terrified that I'd lose what little support I had. The fear of isolation had kept her silent about potential murder, just as it had made her complicit in theft and fraud. My parents had systematically destroyed everyone's ability to trust their own judgment or stand up for what was right. We need to call Dr. Martinez, I tell her, and we need to tell Agent Carter about the medication situation. If Mom really did drug Grandma Eleanor, that's not financial fraud anymore. That's potential murder. Brielle nods, though her face is white with fear. What happens to Madison while all this is going on? What happens to my daughter while I'm testifying against her grandparents for potentially killing her great-grandmother, Aipa? It's a question I can't answer, but I know one thing for certain. Madison deserves better than the legacy of lies and manipulation that has destroyed our family. She deserves the chance to grow up without learning that family means betrayal and love means control. Madison is going to stay with me, I tell Brielle firmly. Whatever happens with the legal proceedings, whatever happens between us, Madison is not going to suffer because of choices the adults in her life have made. For the first time since this nightmare began, Brielle smiles. Thank you. Despite everything I've done to you, despite how badly I've betrayed your trust, you're still willing to protect my daughter. I'm not protecting her just for you. I clarify. I'm protecting her because she's innocent and because she deserves the chance to learn what family really means. She deserves to learn that love doesn't come with conditions and that trust doesn't have to be earned through fear. The conversation we need to have about rebuilding our relationship will have to wait. Right now, there's a little girl who needs stability and safety, while her world falls apart around her. But for the first time in months, I have hope that something good might come from all this pain. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the same dining room where my family betrayed me. But everything has changed. The house has been renovated and redecorated, transformed from a crime scene back into a home. Madison is at the kitchen table doing her homework, her backpack decorated with stickers from the art therapy program that's been helping her process everything that's happened. The legal proceedings move faster than anyone expected. Harold received 8 years in federal prison for fraud identity theft and criminally negligent homicide in Grandma Eleanor's death. The autopsy exhumation confirmed that she'd died from a toxic combination of medications that should never have been taken together. Patricia got 6 years plus, full restitution requirements for conspiracy and money laundering. Marcus Thornfield, their corrupt lawyer friend, is facing 20 years on RICO charges after investigators discovered he'd been running similar scams with multiple families throughout the county. His disbarment was the least of his problems once the federal charges were filed. But the most unexpected development was the discovery of other victims. Uncle Robert's case was just the beginning. Federal investigators uncovered a network of elder abuse cases, going back over a decade with my parents, at the center of a pattern of targeting vulnerable family members and elderly acquaintances. I've become an advocate for other victims working with the FBI's Victim Assistance Program to help families recover from similar betrayals. There's something healing about turning my pain into purpose, about using my experience to prevent others from suffering the same way. Brielle kept her promise to cooperate fully with the investigation. Her testimony was crucial in securing the convictions, and her willingness to admit her mistakes publicly helped other victims find the courage to come forward. The prosecutor offered her a plea deal, 3 years of supervised probation community service and mandatory counseling in exchange for her continued cooperation. She's been living in a small apartment across town, rebuilding her life one day at a time. Dr. Martinez continues to work with her on understanding the patterns of manipulation and control that made her vulnerable to my parents' scheme. More importantly, she's learning to trust her own judgment again. "How was school today, sweetheart?" I ask Madison as she struggles with a math problem. "Mrs. Johnson says I'm getting much better at fractions," she reports proudly. "And Tommy Morrison shared his cookies with me at lunch because I helped him with his reading." Madison has thrived in her new environment. The stability of living with me, combined with regular therapy sessions and a consistent school routine, has helped her process the trauma of watching her family fall apart. She doesn't understand all the details of what happened, but she knows that some adults made very bad choices and that she's safe now. Brielle visits every Tuesday and Thursday for supervised visits plus one weekend afternoon each month. The supervised visits aren't legally required anymore, but we've all agreed that the structure helps everyone feel more secure. Dr. Martinez attends most of the visits, helping Madison and Brielle rebuild their relationship on a foundation of honesty instead of secrets. "Can Mommy come to my school play next week?" Madison asks, looking up from her homework. "We'll have to ask Dr. Martinez," I tell her, "but I think that can probably be arranged." The school play is a milestone. It would be the first public event where Brielle and I appear together since the trial, the first time we'd have to navigate being a family in front of people who know our history. The town is small enough that everyone knows what happened, but most people have been surprisingly supportive. The financial recovery process took months to complete. Most of the stolen money was gone spent on Harold's gambling debts and Patricia's shopping sprees, but I was able to recover about 60% of what they'd taken. More importantly, the federal asset seizure included property and belongings that could be sold to compensate other victims. I used part of the recovered money to set up a trust fund for Madison's education and another portion to establish a victim assistance foundation. The foundation provides legal support and counseling services for families dealing with financial abuse by relatives. It's become my way of honoring Grandma Eleanor's memory and ensuring that her death wasn't completely meaningless. The house itself has become a symbol of healing rather than betrayal. I kept it partly because selling it would have felt like letting them win, but mostly because Madison loves it here. Her bedroom is painted bright yellow with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and she's planted a small garden in the backyard where she grows vegetables for our dinner table. But the most significant change has been in my relationship with trust. I've learned to trust my instincts about people's behavior while still remaining open to authentic relationships. I've learned the difference between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. Most importantly, I've learned that family isn't defined by blood relations, but by mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care. Last month, I received a letter from Patricia in prison. She wants to see Madison and claims she's found religion and reformed her ways. The letter is full of apologies and promises, but it also contains subtle attempts to manipulate my emotions and create guilt about keeping Madison away from her grandmother. I showed the letter to Dr. Martinez, who pointed out the manipulation techniques embedded in the language. Patricia hasn't changed. She's just learned to disguise her manipulation as religious conversion and grandmother's love. I wrote back with a simple message when she's completed her sentence and undergone extensive therapy. With an independent counselor, we can discuss supervised visits in a public setting. Until then, Madison's safety and emotional well-being come first. Harold hasn't written at all, which is probably for the best. His gambling addiction was the catalyst that started everything, and according to his fellow inmates, he's already trying to organize poker games in prison. Some people never change. But Brielle has changed genuinely and substantially. She completed her community service early, working with elderly residents at a nursing home, where she could use her experience to help protect them from financial abuse. She's been sober for 8 months and has a steady job at a local credit union, where she helps people avoid the debt traps that contributed to her own financial problems. Artemis, she said during our last family dinner, I know I can never fully make up for what I did to you. I know I can never give you back the trust I broke or the security I stole from you. But I want you to know that watching you rebuild your life after everything we did to you has taught me what real strength looks like. The relationship between Brielle and me will never be what it once was, but it's become something new and perhaps more honest. We're learning to be family on different terms, with clear boundaries and open communication. Madison benefits from having both of us in her life, and we both benefit from focusing on her needs, rather than our own complicated history. The dining room where this story began is now a place where Madison does art projects and I work on victim assistance cases. The table where Brielle threw wine at me is now where we eat family dinners and help Madison with homework. The space has been reclaimed and redefined, just like our lives. Tonight, as I'm tucking Madison into bed, she asks me a question that stops my heart. Artemis, why did Grandma and Grandpa do bad things to people they loved? It's a question I've been dreading, but also preparing for. Sometimes, sweetheart people make very bad choices because they want things they can't have, and they convince themselves that wanting something badly enough makes it okay to hurt other people to get it. But that doesn't make sense. Madison says with the clarity that only children possess, hurting people you love doesn't get you what you want. It just gets you in trouble and makes everyone sad. You're absolutely right. I agree. That's why it's so important to always tell the truth even when it's hard, and to ask for help instead of taking things that don't belong to you. Is that why you help other families now, so they can learn to tell the truth and ask for help? The simplicity of her understanding brings tears to my eyes. That's exactly why, sweetheart, so other families can learn to take care of each other the right way. As I turn off her bedroom light, I realize that Madison has learned the most important lesson of all, that real love means protecting each other, not using each other. That families are supposed to make each other stronger, not tear each other down for personal gain. The little girl who could have grown up learning that family means betrayal is instead learning that family means safety, honesty, and unconditional support. She's breaking a cycle of manipulation and control that has probably affected our family for generations. And in teaching her those lessons, I've learned them myself. 1 year after that horrible dinner, I'm hosting a celebration in the same dining room, but this time it's filled with people who chose to be here out of love rather than greed. Madison's 8th birthday party is in full swing with her friends from school, her teacher, Mrs. Johnson, Dr. Martinez, and her family, and even some of the families I've helped through the Victim Assistance Foundation. Brielle is here too, no longer under supervision but present by choice and invitation. She's been clean and sober for 14 months now, has her own apartment and a promotion at the credit union, and most importantly, she's learned to have an honest relationship with her daughter. Make a wish, birthday girl, I tell Madison as she leans over her cake, 8 colorful candles flickering in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. She closes her eyes tight, takes a deep breath, and blows out all the candles in one try. The room erupts in cheers and applause from kids and adults alike. "What did you wish for?" her friend Emma asks. "I can't tell you or it won't come true," Madison replies seriously, "but it was something good." Later, after the guests have gone home and the kitchen is clean, Madison and I are curled up on the couch, looking through photo albums from the past year, pictures of school events, family dinners, trips to the zoo, and quiet moments reading together, a visual record of a life rebuilt on foundations of trust and honesty. "Artemis," Madison says thoughtfully, "do you think Grandma and Grandpa will ever get to come to one of my birthday parties?" It's a question she asks periodically, and my answer has evolved as she's gotten older and able to understand more complex ideas. "Maybe someday," and I tell her honestly, "but only if they learn to make better choices and only if it's safe for everyone. The most important thing is that you're protected and loved, and that won't change no matter what happens with them." "I think I understand," she says, snuggling closer. "It's like how Tommy Morrison couldn't come to school for a week because he was throwing rocks at other kids. Sometimes people have to have consequences for bad choices before they can learn to make good choices." Her ability to understand justice without losing compassion continues to amaze me. She doesn't hate her grandparents, but she understands that love doesn't mean accepting harmful behavior. Brielle joins us on the couch, and for a moment we look like any normal family having a quiet evening together. But we're not normal, and we never will be. We're better than normal. We're a family that has been through the worst possible betrayal and chosen to rebuild based on truth instead of pretense. "Thank you," Brielle says quietly, "for giving me the chance to earn back the right to be Madison's mother. Thank you for not giving up on us completely." "Thank you for doing the work to become someone worth trusting again," I reply. "Thank you for choosing to be honest even when it was hard." The Victim Assistance Foundation I established has helped 43 families in the past year. Some cases involve financial fraud like ours, others deal with emotional manipulation or inheritance theft. But they all share the common thread of trust violated by people who should have protected instead of betrayed. Working with these families has taught me that our story isn't unique. Family betrayal happens more often than people want to admit, and the shame and isolation that follow make it difficult for victims to seek help. Many people suffer in silence because they believe that maintaining family relationships is more important than protecting themselves from abuse. But I've also learned that healing is possible, that trust can be rebuilt, and that families can emerge stronger after confronting their worst impulses. Not every story has a happy ending, but many do when people are willing to do the difficult work of change. The foundation now has 3 full-time counselors, a legal aid clinic, and support groups that meet twice weekly. We've partnered with the FBI's Victim Assistance Program to provide immediate help for families dealing with ongoing financial crimes. Most importantly, we've created a safe space for people to admit that the people they love have hurt them badly. Last month, I received an unexpected call from Detective Rivera. Patricia has been writing letters to other inmates' families, trying to manipulate them into sending her money by claiming she has information about their cases. She's been moved to a higher security facility and is facing additional charges for attempted fraud from prison. Harold's situation is different. His gambling addiction led him to accumulate debts with other inmates, and he's been moved to protective custody for his own safety. He's asked to speak with me, probably hoping I'll send money or provide assistance with his legal appeals. I declined the request. Harold made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. My responsibility is to Madison, to Brielle, and to the other families we're helping through the foundation. I don't owe my father anything beyond the justice he's already received. But the most meaningful development has been completely unexpected. 3 months ago, I received a call from a woman named Jennifer Walsh, Uncle Robert's former neighbor. She'd been following our case in the news and wanted to meet with me. Jennifer told me that Uncle Robert had been like a grandfather to her children when they were young. He'd been a kind, generous man who loved gardening and always shared vegetables from his backyard plot. She'd been heartbroken when he died and had always suspected something wasn't right about his final months. He kept telling me that Harold was taking his money, she said, but everyone said he was getting confused because of his age. I should have listened to him. I should have done something. Her guilt was familiar. The guilt of knowing something was wrong but not acting on that knowledge. The guilt of choosing family peace over justice. But Jennifer had something amazing to offer. Uncle Robert's garden had been abandoned after his death, but she'd been secretly maintaining it for 5 years, preserving the heirloom tomato and pepper varieties he'd spent decades developing. She wanted to share them with Madison to give her a connection to the great uncle she'd never really known. Now Madison tends Uncle Robert's garden in our backyard, growing the same vegetables he loved and learning about the man whose death helped bring justice to our family. It's a living memorial that teaches her about legacy and continuity, about how good things can survive even when bad things happen. The tomatoes are almost ready, Madison announces, coming in from the garden with dirt under her fingernails and pride on her face. Uncle Robert's tomatoes are going to be the best ones at the farmer's market booth. The farmer's market booth is her latest project. She sells vegetables from Uncle Robert's garden and donates the proceeds to the Victim Assistance Foundation. At 8 years old, she's already learned that healing happens when you turn your pain into purpose. As we get ready for bed, Madison asks me one final question. Artemis, if Grandma and Grandpa had just asked you for help instead of trying to steal from you, would you have given them money? Yes, I tell her honestly. If they'd been honest about Dad's gambling problems and Mom's shopping debt, if they'd asked for help making a budget or getting counseling, I would have done whatever I could to help them. Then why didn't they just ask? It's the question that haunts me, the question that reveals the saddest truth about our story. They didn't ask for help because asking would have required admitting they had problems. Asking would have required being vulnerable and accepting that they'd made mistakes. Stealing felt easier than acknowledging their failures and working to fix them. Sometimes people would rather do wrong things secretly than do right things openly, I explain. Sometimes people are more afraid of being embarrassed than they are of hurting other people. Madison considers this seriously. That's really sad. It is sad, I agree. But it's also why it's so important to create families where people can admit mistakes without being afraid, where asking for help feels safe instead of shameful. As I turn off her light, I realize that's exactly what we've built. A family where honesty is rewarded instead of punished, where vulnerability is met with support instead of judgment, where love means protection instead of exploitation. Madison will grow up knowing that she can trust the adults in her life to put her needs first. She'll grow up knowing that family means safety, that love comes without conditions, and that asking for help is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. But more than that, she'll grow up knowing that justice is possible, that bad choices have consequences, and that healing is always an option for people willing to do the work. The dining room where this story began in betrayal has become a place where we celebrate honesty and connection. The house that was meant to be stolen has become a sanctuary where other victims find hope and support. The family that was torn apart by greed has been rebuilt on foundations of truth and mutual respect. Not everyone gets a second chance. Not every broken family can be repaired. But when people are willing to face their mistakes honestly and do the difficult work of change, beautiful things become possible. As I close Madison's door and head to my own room, I'm filled with gratitude for the painful lessons that led to this peaceful moment. I'm grateful for the strength I found to fight back when everything seemed hopeless. I'm grateful for the justice that allowed healing to begin. But most of all, I'm grateful for the reminder that family isn't about perfection or loyalty at any cost. Family is about showing up for each other with honesty, protecting each other's dignity, and creating spaces where everyone can thrive. That's the legacy I want to leave for Madison. That's the lesson I want other families to learn from our story. Love isn't about what you can take from people. Love is about what you're willing to give sacrifice and build together. And that's a lesson worth fighting for. What would you do if you discovered family members were systematically betraying your trust and stealing your future? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself from people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this story if it touched your heart. Subscribe for more real-life stories about courage, justice, and healing, and please share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's possible to rebuild after betrayal. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember that no matter how dark things seem, there's always hope for a brighter tomorrow when we choose truth over comfort and justice over false peace.